Did it work? Great. So, yes, I'm Christoph von Dach, and I'm one of the ICoP directors from Switzerland. I'm calling in from Bern, where I work at Bern University of Applied Science. And together with my colleague, Caroline Dixon, I'm leading this webinar series. However, it's her last webinar. She will step back. But please, Caroline, introduce yourself.
Good morning, everybody. It's lovely to see you. And Christoph and I have really enjoyed facilitating these webinar series. I'm sitting in sunny, if coolish, Edinburgh, and it's lovely to connect with you all.
Thank you. So again, the purpose of this series is to connect you, the global ICoP community, by sharing and discussing innovations in the field of person-centeredness, and also providing a platform for members of the person-centered practice international community of practice to share development projects, research, and scholarly work. With that in mind, we also welcome ideas from members for topics for future events. Please do not hesitate to get in touch with us. And also, we are happy if you promote these webinars and encourage colleagues from your networks to join us via the PCP ICoP website. The webinar will last 1.5 hours. It's crucial for us to include every one of you into the sessions and encourage you to bring your questions and ideas into the session. There will be an input at the beginning, and then you will have the possibility to discuss in breakout rooms. And this webinar will be a little bit special, and you will see there will be also a special kind of event after the breakout rooms. And then we will also have Paul Slaughter for a short input about Frontiers, the journal where we have very interesting inputs about person-centered practice. Caroline, do you want to add something?
No, beautifully done, Christoph.
Thank you. And now I'm particularly pleased to welcome a guest from Australia. It's Professor Dr. Ria Mackay from Swinburne University. She works there in teaching and research, and she is a member also of the board of directors of PCP ICoP, and is therefore also deeply involved in the topic of person-centeredness. The title of her presentation is Crafting Healthful Relationships to Person-Centered Learning Experience. So the focus for the next 90 minutes will be on healthful relationship in person-centered practice, a very important topic. Thank you very much for being here, Ria, and I'm very excited to hear more and hand over to you now.
Thank you very much, Christoph and Carolyn, for inviting me to do this presentation. So I'm going to be sharing with you some research I did as part of my PhD, and I also did my PhD as a grandmother. At Queen Margaret University, which I was very pleased to spend 5 years coming and going to Queen Margaret University. So Edinburgh is a very special place for me. So thank you. And yeah, we'll be talking about person-centered relationships and unpacking what I discovered about them throughout my studies. So I'd like to start with an acknowledgement, so bring a little bit of Australian tradition and Aboriginal culture to you. So I'm a Wiradjuri woman and a very proud Aboriginal woman here in Australia, and I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the Wurundjeri peoples, and that's the land that I'm coming to on, Naarm, which is Melbourne, but also the Wiradjuri people from Western New South Wales, which is my traditional lands and the traditional custodians there. I'd also like to acknowledge the devastating impact colonisation still has on our lands and pay my respects to elders past and present, and to any other Aboriginal people who might be joining us, or Indigenous people who might be joining us here today, and also calling on our collective ancestors. All of us, if we draw our lineage back far enough, are First Nations people from land, so it is an important connection for all of us to make. So my ancestors will be with me as I share my presentation with you. And we say in Australia, always was, always will be, which means that this land always was and always will be Aboriginal land, and that's our Aboriginal flag down the bottom for you. I'd also like to dedicate my talk to my wonderful supervisor, Professor Jan Dewing. So Jan, as many of you knew and loved, was a wonderful person who I met first of all here in Australia, because she used to come to the University of Wollongong when I worked there, and then became my friend, my supervisor, my mentor. And I feel very honoured and privileged to be sharing research that I undertook under her guidance while she was at Queen Margaret University. Yeah, brought many of us, and I saw Kelly's on the line as well. So many of us over with her, and yeah, I'd just like to acknowledge her input into the research that I'm about to share with you. So what we're going to do today is explore how purposefully creating healthy relationships can engender kindness and learning within us and within others, and consider how creating healthy relationships is the linchpin from turning ordinary experiences into extraordinary experiences for others. So often it's the ordinary things we do and care, and those relationships we create that people remember forever. And I'll then just consider what a healthy relationship is and how we can use that to think about thinking about persons, not just the title that we have, and connecting to our authentic selves. So why did I focus on health relationships? When I began my PhD, which was quite some time ago now, I was working as the Director of Clinical Learning in practice so I was working at the university, but I looked after the practice component of our degree. And I just thought there was a real difference in students' perspectives, and thinking about that kind of rhetoric about, you know, students in the university still, and students in, you know, the fact that the university and the healthcare system probably, you know, are not at one. And I always think that's a really interesting conversation, because, you know, it's an ongoing one, but a very interesting one. And also thinking about these ordinary moments, and thinking about how the impact of, I suppose, my career has had on, it's the very ordinary moments in my career, which have been very extraordinary experiences for myself and for others. But that real rhetoric, you know, when you walk into a tea room and you hear people talking about students in a very unkind way, yet they walk out and pretend that they're going to be really kind and caring to them. And thinking about the fact that we have to change that, because really thinking about the fact that I worked with a lady called Kathy Eager, and she used to talk about the good old days, and she used to say, enjoy today, because in 5 years' time, you're actually in the good old days. But we always, you know, revert back and say that things were great in the past, because we remember the past with fond memories, and today's, you know, much harder. But it's good to be present and to really think about we are actually in the good old days. And then just thinking about how we can be more kind, and how we can really balance the art and science in nursing has always been something I've been really passionate about. And, you know, I'm sure everyone in this call is really passionate about that as well. And that's notwithstanding, we need to be professionally competent as healthcare practitioners, but we also need to honour the art of nursing to be professionally competent as well. So thinking about the terms, obviously kindness, and many of you know that I live in the land of the world of virtues, and kindness is something that I think is a really important part of practice for us as nurses, for any healthcare practitioners. I'm aware that's probably not all nurses on the call at the moment, but I'm a paediatric nurse and midwife. That's my clinical background. And I stopped practicing last October when I turned 60, and thought that's enough. But I've always dabbled in practice, even when I was in management and in academia as well. Delivered my last baby last October, and I won't be going back to practice anymore. But the practice of kindness, I have empathy for others. I notice what people need. I love to be helpful. I am thoughtful in the little ways. I practice good habits that help the earth. I'm a good caregiver to myself. I'm thankful for the gift of kindness that awakens my heart. And I think if we embrace that when we're creating relationships with others, that creating healthful relationships, I think kindness is really fundamental to that. So this is a model that I created with both clinical supervisors and nursing students. So I had participants both. So in the Australian model is a bit different to those of you probably from the UK and other parts of Europe. We, for every 8 students in practice, employ a registered nurse who goes into practice with those students, and we call them clinical facilitators. And then I had another group of people who were students and worked with both of those groups to think about as they experience practice together, what was a healthful relationship for them? So we know in the person-centered practice framework that, you know, healthfulness is having a healthfulness is right in the middle of it, but they're underpinned by helpful relationships. A healthful culture is underpinned by helpful relationships. So, and when I started, you know, probably some 11 years ago, there wasn't a good definition of what a healthful relationship is. And what we came up together was healthful relationships are evident when persons experience a sense of being in practice together while supporting each other to seek their full potential. And so that's the relationship, you could say, between registered nurses, that's the relationship between students and registered nurses, but I would argue that's the relationship between everyone. If we're in relationships where we're trying to help each other to seek their full potential, then we're having really enabling and empowering relationships with people. So that was the definition, and it really came from, you know, lots of participants, but one participant that really stood out for me, she said, I know that I'm in a good relationship with a student when I'm not the facilitator and they're the student. We're just two nurses in practice together. And so when we think about taking those titles away and taking those kind of, I suppose, you know, thinking about power, in how we balance that power, that's when we know that we're in a good, healthful relationship in the practice context. So this model obviously has the practice context and the kind of the parts on the outside. It's got the student, the curriculum, and the facilitator in the middle. But now we're going to break down those middle kind of petals and the other circles in there, or the speech bubbles in there, to think about what I learned about what a healthful relationship is. So obviously person-centeredness and personhood, and, you know, with tenure on the line, it's very stressful talking about person-centeredness, can I just say? Because the whole concept, obviously the definition that Tenure and Brendan have is up there, and thinking about this concept of personhood, where we bestow a status upon others, and we know we do that in society. You know, politicians have a status, and sports people have a status, and, you know, obviously Kit Wood created this with people with dementia, and he would say that a lower status was, you know, stowed upon them. So we do that up, you know, both elevating status and both taking status off people. And so that, you know, when I thought about personhood in my PhD, it was really about enabling persons to live their life plan whilst us not placing our values and beliefs upon them. And I think I heard, you know, that personhood talked about in many, many different concepts. And this was the one that really stuck with me, because I think if we do that, the other part of what I do in my practice is look at culturally safe practice. And we're going to be culturally safe and we're going to be culturally responsive to other people's needs if we do enable people to live their life plans whilst not placing our values and beliefs upon them, just as we will be kind and we will be able to meet that person's needs. So thinking about that, many of you know that Brene Brown was very dear to my heart, and this comes out of the Dare to Lead book that Brene Brown wrote about leadership. But creating a culture of kindness at work distributes the joy of problem solving to everyone, creates a safe environment that unleashes innovation and turns perceived liabilities into assets to create real equity value in the meaning of the word. So if we think about, you know, that kind of the joy that comes out of that relationship that we create with others, that's largely why many of us are in the kind of healthcare professions that we're in. And, you know, I've always really liked this concept of turning ordinary to extraordinary, and it was part of that I worked with participants around. And, you know, it came to me over many, many different experiences, but one that kind of still gives me goosebumps today was I was a fairly young nurse and had been a pediatric nurse and midwife, and I was had small children at this point, and I was admitting a child to children's ward. And I could tell the mother was looking at me. And, you know, when your kids are little, you're thinking, do I know from school, netball, football? Like, where do I know this person from? Because clearly they know me. And she said to me, is your name Rhea? And I said, yes. And she said, did you do your midwifery at St. Margaret's? And I said, yes. And she said, you delivered my first baby and you were so kind to me. And those are the moments that really bring us such joy. And so, you know, of course, I didn't immediately remember her, but when we talked about her story, she was actually the first premature birth that I was at as a student midwife. So then we sort of reconnected. And once she told me her story, I did remember who she was. And not that you remember everyone that you care for, but you know, it's one of those moments. What a privilege that is in life, to have someone remember you for the wonderful things you did. Now, everything I probably did for that woman was very ordinary. I just cared for her as she was birthing. There was nothing extraordinary, you know, in her birth. She was a little bit, you know, I think she was 36 weeks, but the baby came out, the baby was fine, and, you know, there wasn't anything extraordinary that I needed to do. But it was just the moments that I shared with her that helped her to remember who I was. Just as people remember us for the you know, unkind, I suppose, parts of healthcare. But, you know, it's one of the real joys we have, and that's a real thing that sparked my interest in just that importance of creating really meaningful relationships with people. So what I want you to do as we explore what a healthful relationship is, to think about a relationship that you have that you find a little bit challenging. So it could be, you know, in the workplace, it could be a personal relationship, it doesn't really matter. But what's a relationship that you would like it to have more value, you know, that you would really like to value more, but you find a little bit challenging, and we all have those. And what I want you to focus on, not is the other person's role, but what's your role in this, as we explore what a healthful relationship is. And if we think about those, you know, relationships, it's easy to have healthful relationships with people that we, you know, assimilate really quickly and easily with. It's much more challenging when a relationship, you know, is a bit more challenging for us. So the petals on the outside, or the speech bubbles on the outside of this, talk about cultivating mutual respect. So that's about creating relationships that cultivate trust and respect by being authentic and inclusive of individuality. Offering hope is really important. And in both the participants, both the students and the facilitators, they gave their information separately, but this concept of offering hope was really important. So that's about creating relationships where opportunities are experienced as a gift, and language is hopeful, future focused, and suggests that issues are temporary. And then finally, being open to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And that's creating relationships where we're a learner and we're not an expert. So if you go back to that relationship, if you were to give those to that relationship, what would that relationship look like? The other two really important elements, and these aren't in any particular order, are about creating shared expectations. So creating relationships that move towards discomfort by co-creating shared ways of doing and being with each other. And accepting difference. So creating relationships that are vulnerable and brave and encourage persons to optimize difference. So again, these are things that you can give to that relationship. We often in relationships think about that reciprocity. What do we give and what do we receive from a relationship? But really, when we're thinking about relationships, it's about what we're going to give to that relationship to help create the relationship. That's really fundamentally important. And in my research, students said to me something that was quite obvious when they said it, but very unknown to me before they said it. They said to me, you spend all this time helping the clinical supervisors, so the registered nurses who were with them in practice, to think about how they create a relationship with us. But you actually don't talk to us about how we create relationship with them. And so fundamental in curriculum should be about helping students to really think about what their role is in all of those 5 elements, so they can create relationships, because they won't automatically, with people they work with, people they care for, have that affinity, and we all have to work at relationships. So the middle ring is then about respecting personhood. So creating relationships that see the person behind the title. And we've all been in situations where people have treated us in a way because of a title that we have, where you know, we're seen to hold power, or we're treated differently because we either have a title or we don't have a title. And power is really interconnected, of course, with that. And then the other part of that circle is about knowing self to enable belonging. And many of you know that I have a really strong affiliation to belonging and how that enables learning. And thinking about, there are 2 definitions of belonging. One is the Maslow definition of belonging, the behaviouralist definition, where we belong to fit in. And we know that we encourage students to fit in, even though we don't mean to. Across their degree, we teach them how to look like a nurse, how to behave like a nurse. They go into practice and they very quickly learn that if they're in intensive care, they want to be an intensive care nurse. If they're in renal, they want to be a renal nurse. And if I say the other, I won't be as well accepted. So they learn very quickly how to fit in. And then in Australia, they do what's called a graduate year, where they don't have a job till the end of that year. So then they have to fit in for another year. So after 4 years, they don't know anything else but fitting in. Whereas actually true belonging, as Maya Angelou would talk about, she was a Black American woman from America, says, you know, belonging is about belonging to no one or no thing. It's about belonging to yourself and your values. It comes with great reward and great sacrifice. And we know that if we want to belong to ourselves and if we want to be different, then that does come with a sacrifice, because we're not always going to be people pleasers then. So it's about creating relationships that challenge what is known about oneself to enable persons to have the courage to be authentic in their actions and their behaviours. And that's really important, because we need to have that difference in health professions, particularly in nursing, if we want to transform and do things differently. We at the moment encourage people to fit in, and then we wonder why things don't change. And then that comes back to the overall outcome of that health relationships are evidence when persons experience a sense of being in practice together while supporting each other to seek their full potential. And that's the ultimate outcome that we're looking for, that both people in that relationship grow with, learn with and from each other, both have the opportunity to grow and to seek their full potential. It's not potential I'm going to bestow upon them, it's the potential that they want to achieve for themselves. So thinking about, well, I've got earning, it's supposed to be learning on this slide.
Ria,
How do health...
Ria, do you mind if I just interrupt just a wee second?
Yeah.
There's a big black square on your slides, and it does jump about a little bit. I wonder if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, that's me trying to look at what I've written, because it's I think it's what I can see from the block of faces is sometimes over the writing.
Oh, right, that's weird. That's weird.
So
because
maybe I should have had it stuck at the top or something.
maybe just we can see it jumping about, and it's sometimes obscuring your lovely presentation. Sorry for interrupting.
That's okay.
And maybe I don't know whether you wanted to take questions at the end or whether you want.
I'm happy to take them whenever.
So Rhoda has asked what crafting means and what theoretical underpinning does this term have. So she was interested in, I think, when you were talking about crafting relationships. Yeah.
For me, crafting, we thought a lot about that term, and crafting was about, I suppose, creatively working together to create relationships. My overall PhD had a collage of sat within person-centeredness, but largely sat within critical theory. And I was influenced by two kinds of theory, two predominant theorists, but lots of other people. So, the Mesereau concept of transformational learning and how you create opportunities for learning through disorienting dilemmas, and the concept of crafting health relationships means that they're both people involved. So it's not, and that they're purposeful for me. And then obviously my other theorist that I was quite interested in was Habermas, and Habermas's theory of communicative action theory around that. So for me, crafting was about the fact that there was a purposeful intent to create the relationship, and the craft of a relationship. I don't know if that answers your question.
Rhoda, is that okay for you?
Yes, that's okay for me. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Debbie's suggesting that I give you a host status. Ria, maybe that would help but I'm not sure how to do it.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Can we just work with it? Is that okay?
Wait, I'm nearly finished. So yeah.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
Yeah. So thinking about helpful placements, how helpful relationships create learning environments in our workplace, it is about focusing on each other. So it is about moving away from that concept of, often my experience of being a nurse for a very long time has been, we've often used point of care to justify maybe not being kind to each other. So really focusing on each other, because we know that if we're kind to each other, if we create helpful relationships with each other, then when we get to point of care, we're much more able to be person-centered at point of care. And being open to learn, unlearn and relearn with each other is fundamentally important in that. also thinking about creating healthful relationships in your workplace to make it a better place to work, where people can seek their full potential, where people want to work. All of those things are so fundamentally important. And I would argue COVID gave us a really fabulous opportunity to consider really doing things differently in healthcare. And I can only speak from the Australian perspective, but nothing seems to have changed. So we had this fabulous opportunity and people have just gone back to everything being the way it was. People are back to busy being busy. People are back to, you know, in some ways COVID gave people the license to go back to things that happened when I was a very young nurse, you know, lots more control on when visitors could come and lots more control on lots of things that people are holding on a little bit tightly to and haven't completely let go of either. And I thought it was a real shame because it was an absolute opportunity for us to really rethink about how we, you know, create our future workforces. Then there's that concept of thinking about, you know, the impact of healthful relationships on the future workforce. What's going to want people to come and work in healthcare professions? You know, it's hard work. It's not particularly well remunerated. Really, all we have in the healthcare kind of context is goodwill and this concept of building social capital. And thinking about that, if you come to work and you experience the opportunity to seek your full potential, then it is likely to lead to the creation of person-centered experiences for people, person-centered workforces of the future, and really thinking about how we do that and value, you know, both the kindness and the art of nursing, and person-centeredness is embedded within that. And then, you know, we equally value that with our technical skills because, you know, there is a lot of emphasis, and again, I can only speak on the Australian context, but, you know, if you're an ICU nurse, you seem to bestow a status upon yourselves that is much higher than that of, say, an aged care nurse. And we really need to move away from those kinds of things and think about how we have this health relationship and how we value everyone in that context. So I just want to leave you with this little quote that says, it's from Maya Angelou, "My wish for you is that you continue to be who you are, to astonish a mean world with your acts of kindness." And, you know, I'm not suggesting healthcare is a mean world, but, you know, the world in general isn't always kind. So let's think about how we can walk forward, I suppose, creating healthful relationships and thinking about how we purposely create relationships with people, whether they be the people we work with, the people we care for, or the people, you know, the students who are coming into our practice who are going to be our future workforce. So thank you for listening. And I'm going to stop sharing because then my little black thing won't go everywhere. So if there's any questions before we go into a breakout rooms and have a bit of a think, I'd be happy to answer those, or we can just go into some breakout rooms. Debbie, yeah.
Maria, it's Debbie Baldy here from Scotland.
Lovely to see you, Deb.
Hi, and thanks. Sorry for just butting in. I'm not used to using Zoom these days, so I can't remember how to put my hand up. So, lovely to see your presentation. I think the last time I seen you present, you were in your 3rd year of your doctorate, I think. So, great to see it in its completion. What would you say makes you define these relationships as healthful rather than merely kind, considering that's a key focus of today's presentation? The kindness bit has really spoken to me, but what differentiates it that goes beyond kindness to being healthful, would you say?
I think the relationship, so the research was underpinned very closely with the person-centered practice framework, and we use the person-centered practice framework as the kind of guiding part for the questions that we had for people to think and consider their relationship with each other. So because it was built on and around the person-centered practice framework with a healthful culture being something that we talked about and really want to unpack a healthful culture. All of the kind of, I suppose, the purpose in the research was to think about what a healthful relationship was and think about how we could define that. Now, kindness obviously is a big part of that, but it's not the whole part of it. It is about that kind of everyday interaction and all of the elements of that, you know, about respecting difference, about offering hope, about, and all of those things are kind, of course, but, you know, creating, like having those shared expectations, being open to learn and unlearn with each other. So kindness, I think, very much underpins it, but it does embrace that overall aspect of being person-centered with each other.
Are there any more questions for Maria?
I wondered if when you go into your breakout rooms, you could consider, you know, your role in creating healthy relationships and how you could purposely do that, and, you know, thinking about that in a relationship, not necessarily disclosing the relationship you find challenging, but, you know, what could you do to think about those elements of, you know, offering hope, about accepting difference. That's usually one of our hardest ones, accepting difference. We actually want people to look very much like us and be very much like us. Being open to learn, unlearn and relearn, thinking about shared expectations. You know, what are those things that fundamentally for you would make a difference in your, how you purposely create that relationship? And I think we're going to have, how long are we going to have to go into the, because we thought we might do a way up a meditation at the end, just bring another little bit of myself into this at the end.
How long will I set the groups up for, Maria?
I'm on a different time zone than you, Carolyn, so it might be more helpful if thinking about the time frame from your perspective.
15 minutes?
15 minutes, I think, would be great. Yep.
Yeah, well, she'll still give us 40 minutes until the end of the... Okay, I will... maybe everybody's back now. Are you there, Christoph? Oh, still coming back.
Yes, I'm here.
I don't know if everyone received the message. I did put the things in, but I didn't know if it came through because I was in my group. Sorry, Tanya.
I put them on, Maria, so hopefully everybody...
Oh, thank you.
Well, actually, Maria, we had Kelly in our group.
Oh,
Kelly typed them in while we were talking, so we were all good.
She's good like that.
She was singing your praises.
Oh. Would anyone like to share back some of your discussion? It doesn't even have to be directly related to what the question was, but any insights, thoughts?
Sorry, I haven't got a hand function. Can you hear me?
Go, Joe.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Thanks, Maria. So I was in with
Carolyn,
Maria.
we didn't know if you purposely put Kate, Joanne and I together.
Oh, that made me, I had to get my fan out. So I'd put in the chat, as you saw, about some of Olga's work around nurses being human capital. So we talked about that at the beginning, and the the difference between in language with health economics and healthful cultures, and that is absolutely a journey that I would love to go on with Olga, and I've kind of parked it for a minute. But I was talking about my role as, I'm in that squished bit in the middle between my team, who are person-centered practice facilitators, and then our board of trustees, and then my role in the system as well as up and, around funds. And it's really hard work. It's really hard work because it's taken me 6 years to really, really get into this. And my board of trustees are not there as professionals to do the doing, are they? They're there for strategy and governance. And so I find it really difficult, but I do it because it's really, really important. And it's important that they understand who we are and what we embody in the organisation. But I can imagine if you had a chief nursing officer or somebody in a director position who's been to one of our practice development schools or residential programs, when they go back to their organisation, I can imagine them getting sucked back into doing the doing. You are human capital, or you are this, you are that, you're a widget. And I'm really interested in Sean Cardiff's framework around the macro context. Maria and I were just talking about that. And we've got a lot of work to do, because we can't stay in a bubble. We can't. We have to purposefully, I believe. I need to purposefully share my learning and my transformation over the last few years with others, to try and see where they are in this process, and how we can work together. And so that's kind of my reflection of the conversation that we had with Maria.
Thanks, Jo. Anyone else like to share?
Tanya has their hand up.
So Joanna's just come in there, massive big macro context commentary. And I suppose in our group, I listened to your presentation, Ria, with my little daughter in mind. Everybody who knows me knows that my daughter's third year nursing in Liverpool. And oh my goodness, your 5 ways of being, cultivating mutual respect, offering hope, really resonated. I might get stories every single, she's on placement at the moment, and I'm on the roller coaster with her like every day. So from that big macro context that Joanne was talking about, to my everyday lived experience with my little daughter, third year nurse, and some of what you talked about really, really resonated. And it's that whole, it is about, fundamentally about some of her team showing kindness, but actually the hard work is how you move it from that just, they were nice to me, well, actually, Melissa, that's not really enough, to these other, engaging these other ways of being to develop healthy relationships. And I offered a story to my group earlier on, where this nurse, she hadn't really worked with her before on Saturday morning, and she came on duty and she says, well, Melissa, we haven't really met before. We haven't spent time before. So we're going to have coffee together and I'm going to get to know you. And to me, that was about cultivating mutual respect. And she was buzzing when she came off, because it just transformed her day. So I think this work is really amazing, Ria, and I'd love, I know your thesis is there, but I would love to read more and hope to see it in the published literature.
Thank you. Yeah, it's interestingly, Tanya, just relating to what you said, my daughter was going through nursing and probably just finished, well, she's 6 years out now, so she finished sort of at my last year. So I was hearing her stories as well. And yeah, it's an interesting process to go through with them. But then I actually had first year nursing students as my participants, and it was really interesting that people wondered if I would get enough information from them. And that is about one of my principles, one of my methodological principles was that, people are experts in their own learning journey. And so I would just go back to that each time. And they gave me so many beautiful gems and so much learning.
Yeah.
And it was just such a joy to learn with and from them, that we really need to be open to that, because that's our future. And it's a really exciting place to be, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the other big conversation we had in our room was about the power differential. Don't know if you want to maybe say anything about that, because Kelly was mentioning that was definitely an element in your research.
Yeah, Kelly walked very closely with me through all of this, as I did with her. It's a really interesting element, and it was actually someone that Kelly and I both worked with that gave the quote about being in practice with a student, and when you're not the old registered nurse and they're the student, you're actually two nurses in practice together. And I thought that was the most beautiful description of where there's always power, and if we don't recognize the power, then we're being disrespectful to the other person. We know that. But when you get that sense that power is being more evenly distributed, it's such an empowering place to be for both of you. And recognizing that you both have something to learn, because the other thing that really came out was that students are really, really open to be learners. Expert nurses are much less open to be learners, because we've spent a lot of time and invested a lot in being experts, and we want to share all our knowledge. But actually taking that expert hat off is a really hard thing to do for experienced registered nurses. And the clinical supervisors really recognised that they needed to be more open to learning as part of this journey, and that then obviously helps distribute that power. I think Sean had his hand up.
Yeah, that kind of not going. I don't want to go down the power avenue too much, really. I was quite egocentric in the breakout room. I was thinking around the pragmatics, and it does relate to the power issue. Is well, as an educationalist, who am I going to present this framework to? I'm completely sold on the content. Let's put that out there first. I've got no critique around your work that you've done at all. For me, it was more in the pragmatics. And I suppose the conclusion I'm coming to, and trying to be a bit authentic and think from person-centered paradigm, is that I would probably present the framework to somebody who should be instigating healthful relationships. So if we take the educational environment, it would be for lecturers and for mentors and preceptors, or whatever name you give them in practice, who work with students to try and help them think about how do they instigate a healthy relationship, because it's only the beginning. There needs to be the reciprocity. And I think from my work as well, it was very much once the leaders instigated a more person-centered approach, they were reciprocated with the same kind of, you used the term kindness, the same kind of virtue and kindness. And I think, well, then it's a shame if we don't introduce it to students, because they are the future. They are the 5 years down the road. They are going to be the good old ways when it was a first-year student. So I think maybe we could introduce that to them as in the early stage, in their first year. What does it mean to instigate a person-centered care relationship that's helpful? And so it could give them a tool to think about how they engage, but also to observe the experts in practice. And then it would be the expert in practice who opens themselves up to learning to receive that feedback. So then we're kind of moving into a mechanism that can start to generate these helpful cultures. And it should also be used by leaders as well. It's one of the elements that didn't come out that strong in my work at that time. But I think I could definitely incorporate into my leadership work as well, to help leaders think about, well, how are they going to instigate a leadership relationship that is helpful, and where both can come into their own, and not just they're not servants in the Downton Abbey type of framework. They are servants in terms of the leadership, and they're serving a greater good. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. So there's two. I do have a publication around the 6 steps of working with students in practice. And the framework is the first step. So creating the healthful relationship is the first step, but obviously then integrated through the whole relationship that you have with students. And that's in the Foundation of Nursing Studies. And I can forward that on to Carolyn and she can share that. So it has got its application in how it's integrated through, how you work with students in practice. And the second thing is, in my thesis, I then wrote a lot about emotional intelligence, because we assume that our students have emotional intelligence. We assume registered nurses have emotional intelligence, but we also know that emotional intelligence isn't taught well in primary school, in secondary school, in tertiary education. So it is about, giving, I agree, Sean, it's about giving the students that skill, because we all manage up and we all manage down as well, and we create relationships with people we care for. And so we need to think about how we purposefully do that, and how we do that in a way that is authentic, and how we do that in a way that's purposeful. And so thinking about that kind of aspect of emotional intelligence and giving people skills in that, in the tertiary setting, I think is really fundamentally important. And the person-centered practice framework does that by getting you to think about yourself and thinking about how your own values, your concepts around who you are as a human being, what's a person, how you engage with persons. So I think emotional intelligence is kind of inbuilt within the framework, but we do need to do it in quite a meaningful way as well, because we can't assume emotional intelligence, although we expect it. So that would be and it's a fascinating thing. And I do need to, obviously it is about, Michelle and I have talked about how we would marry our work. Michelle talks about facilitation on the run, as you all know, how we've and we do that in the person-centered schools we run with Kate and with Joe, thinking about, you know, how you facilitate learning, but how you use helpful relationships in that as well. And there's a lot of synergies between what, you know, Michelle and I do, and we have talked about doing research together, but we've never really gone that far. It's a bit like I often think about, you know, the merging of our 2 PhDs could be quite powerful. Yeah. So Michelle.
Thanks. I'm jumping in because I don't have that. Thank you, Maria. Yes, we will get around to it. But I suppose really, and that's kind of some of the conversations that I would have is around, you know, taking kind of, let's say, your framework and being able to kind of look at the theories around that, and it's how do we embrace that kind of, let's say, in new cultures, in new ways. So like we were talking in the group about how the cultures need to kind of almost go hand in hand with that, creating those the learning environment and creating a person-centered learning environment doesn't stand alone and needs to kind of have that being able, you know, to bring it together. And of course it can be instigated by a helpful relationship and a facilitator who knows about helpful relationships, and that will become something bigger as you're going along. But it's about taking it from the broader aspect, and how do we create the conditions that this is every day, that it's in practice, it's in every relationship.
You're frozen a bit, Michelle.
With a person who is co-learning with me, and you know, somebody else gives them a very dictatorial way of how to do it, just do it our way. You know, it's hand in hand. I think we have to think about the cultures of where we're delivering those learning environments, so that we're not contradicting each other, and that there is open and transparent conversations in practice. If that makes sense.
Debbie, did you want to say something?
Perhaps this might be our last question, if we're going to have time for the last bit, Maria, before Christoph comes. Is that all right? Sorry, never like to shut down a conversation.
No, I was just going to share what was coming up in our group, Maria, and one of the conversations that we had was, or certainly a realisation for me, was that just because a relationship you have in the workplace is perhaps not helpful as per your definition, doesn't mean it's necessarily completely broken. And is it okay to have something that's functioning but not fully helpful? And do we, in order to stay healthy ourselves and helpful, sometimes have to lower our ambitions? You know, maybe, and we were talking about perhaps we're drawing our own boundaries and our own expectations for the relationship, but they're not mutually agreed. And we don't have sufficient energy because we've put it in before and it hasn't realised what, you know, all the dimensions in your model. And is that okay? I'm not asking you to say is it okay or not. That was a discussion that we were having.
It's a great point, because they don't all have to be present. And it is about accepting difference. I think that's one of the most powerful ones, Debbie. And if we move to a place where we can accept difference, then maybe that relationship is healthful.
Yeah, and Giselle also brought in your element of hope. And actually, if you accept that scenario is temporary and that there's a hope for it being different in the future, you can kind of live with it, live through it, not be harmed by it, you know. So, you know, we, again, like many others have said, we found it a really helpful model. Grateful for you sharing.
And that's where language is really important. You know, if we move our language away from hope and it being temporary, then we're not in a healthful relationship. We've made a judgment. Yeah. So that's where our role is so important, because only we can change that. All right. Well, will we move to Carolyn's got a thumbs up. So what I thought I would do is, there is always two elements to me. One is my kind of love of Indigenous knowledges, and my other is my love of person-centeredness. So, and my current job, I'm marrying the two together and creating a new curriculum using some of the work that, you know, Brendan and Royanne have been working on as well at Sydney. So I'm a WAPA practitioner, and I had kind of wondered whether I should do a WAPA workshop for this presentation or do the health for relationships. And it was Kate that said to me, you have to do health for relationships because you've got to get this out there. So I did that, but then I thought I might bring WAPA in at the end. So WAPA is an Aboriginal word that means connection to country. And it's a earth, mind, body, spirit practice. And it has 14 elements of earth with it. And those 14 elements each have a movement with it, and you do kind of nearly like a Tai Chi yoga kind of movement that explores them. So that's one part of WAPA. But the other is a meditation. And so what I'd invite you to do now is to sit comfortably, or you can lay on the floor or wherever you can hear, and lower your gaze or close your eyes or just be in a place where you feel comfortable. And I'm going to read a WAPA meditation for you that will take you through the 14 elements. So we just think now, connecting with your breath. Let's take a breath in together, in through your nose. Fill your lungs with nourishing air and breathe out with a sigh as you let go of any thoughts or tasks or actions for the rest of the day, allowing yourself to simply become present. Take another breath in and out, letting go of any tension you may be holding in the body, dropping your shoulders away from your ears, letting your belly soften. Breathe in one more time through your nose, and this time as you release the breath, see if you can allow it a gentle stillness to settle over your body. Continuing to take these slow breaths in and out, take your awareness to the surface you're sitting on. Feel the points of contact between your body and the chair, or between your feet and the floor beneath you. Allow yourself to feel held and supported within the space. Take a moment to connect to the earth now. As we allow our imagination to travel down through the foundations of the building you're in, perhaps picturing in your mind the dirt under the building, and then go a little further into the layers of clay and rock, crystals and sand. Letting your awareness go further still, right down into the earth's molten core. Notice the warmth in the core of the earth, deep in Mother Earth's belly, resting here. This is where I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we all live, work and play on today. Let us pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, for they have held and continue to hold through their lines the memories and traditions, the cultures and hope for harmony of our future generations. Let us also honour those who are with us here today in this space, acknowledging our own ancestors, our own unseen teams who support us in our dedication to celebrate, maintain and appreciate the teachings of Mother Earth's wisdom, who provides for us, nourishes us and nurtures us. And in your next breath in, gently feel the warmth back up from the core with your breath through the layers of the earth, through the crust, the skin of the earth, through the foundations of the building you're in, through the floor, your feet. Feel that warmth travelling gently from your toes, up through your legs and your belly into your heart space. Breathe into your heart space for a while, allowing the warmth and energy of the earth to soothe and relax your whole body and being. As we connect to the earth in this way, let's pause for a moment of gratitude for Earth's gifts and the earth connection practice of our own heritage lines. And may we remember as we gather under the same sun that we too are all custodians of this earth, one beautiful earth, our home. Becoming aware of our bodies and the land and those who have come before us, we can begin to ponder how it all came to be as we bring our awareness to the elements of nature and how WAPA reminds us of their wisdom. As we begin in the first element and tune to the energy of the Creator, whatever your personal creation story may be, even if it's just acknowledging that this is a wonderful mystery. turning into the creator energy that created the stars, the waters, the land, and you. All of the same materials, energy that continues to create. Feeling your connection to the creator energy, celebrating the miracle and wonder of being and of your own creative potential. Breathing in and breathing out. Feeling now into the second element, the energy of the sun, our very own star, providing its light, energy, warmth, gifting us with the rhythms of the day and night, the rhythms of the season, showing us how to cycle through our own seasons of light and darkness, activity and rest, new growth and letting go. We take the energy of the sun into our bodies every time we eat. We are the sun. Breathe in deeply, feeling your light and warmth, and breathe out. Feeling into the third element, the energy of the moon now, and its gentle reflective presence in the sky, directing the flow of the tides. She passes through her phases, waxing and waning, sometimes crescent-shaped, showing only a little of herself, sometimes full and shining brightly. Being the moon. Breathe in and breathe out. Becoming aware of the land and the fourth element. Allow your awareness to take you to a special landscape that you connect personally with. Perhaps a stretch of beach or a riverbank, a rainforest or a mountain. Just visualizing yourself in that special place. What can you smell, taste, hear, and see? What does it feel like to be there? Breathing in that land's energy and breathing out. Taking your awareness now to the fifth element, the natural phenomenon of lightning, illuminating the sky, releasing energy, rebalancing and equalizing the atmosphere. Sometimes that lightning may start a fire. Connecting with that fire, feeling its warmth, being reminded of our ancient ancestors' relationship with fire. For cooking, for warmth, for gathering around and sharing stories with community, for caring for the land, connecting with transformative energy of fire and lightning within your own transformative potential, breathing in and breathing out. Now we take our attention to the element of rain, connecting with the energy of the rain, rain that fills our rivers and waterways, nourishes the thirsty earth from all directions, nurturing life, providing us with fresh, clean drinking water. Feel the gentle cleansing rain falling on your skin, washing away any stress or tension as you relax more deeply. We are the freshness of the rain. Breathing in and breathing out. And now bring your awareness to the wind, the seventh element, turning into the energy of the wind, blowing seeds and nutrients across the earth, connecting us all. Sometimes a gentle breeze, sometimes a strong gale that shakes the trees. We are the freedom of the wind. Breathing in and breathing out. Now, honouring the eighth element, we are the tree, a community connected, caring for each other, communicating through complex cooperative networks, a home for many creatures, gifting us food, transforming our air. Breathing in and breathing out. We are the ninth element, the air animal, the winged one, the butterfly, the bee, the bird, soaring above the landscape, offering a new perspective. Breathing in and breathing out. We are the land element, the 10th element, the playful kangaroo. We move across the land, treading gently upon the earth, knowing when to rest, when to move, breathing in and breathing out. We are the water animal element, the eel, the whale, the turtle, carrying in ourselves the memories of our ancestors, travelling their well-worn paths, trusting their intuition, inner guidance. Breathing in and breathing out. We are the hunter element. We are the gatherer element, protecting and nurturing, never taking more than we need, sharing all we have with our people, caring for each other. Breathing in and breathing out. We are the child element. We are the curious and ready to learn, ready to step into and inhabit our own unique expressions, and gifts as we become creators who shape the world around us. Breathing in and breathing out. Thinking again about the interdependent elements of nature, the child, the gatherer, the hunter, the water animal, the land animal, the air animal, the tree, the wind, the rain, the lightning, the earth, the moon, the sun, and where it all began, the creator. Rest here and reflect on your connection to these elements. As we are part of nature, breathe in, breathe out, and again, breathe in, breathe out. Now slowly bring your awareness back to your body, holding all that energy of the elements with you. And again, noticing the connection between your body and the surface you're sitting on. Feeling yourself held there. Now bringing some gentle movement back into your fingers and toes, wriggling them, taking a gentle stretch. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes and come back into the room. Thank you, and I hope that's something you can take with you either into your day or into your evening, depending on which part of the world you're on.
Thank you so much, Maria.
Yes, Ria, thank you so much for your touching, thoughtful and fascinating, inclusive insights into the importance of human relationships. It was great, and I think that's what the world urgently needs today. Thank you so much. Does anybody, or you want to ask something, or somebody wants to add something, or shall I finish up? Yeah. So Paul Slater wanted to join something about the publication in Frontiers, but he already had to leave, so he is not here. Maybe he will come next time and bring his informations about it. And now we already nearly reached the end of our webinar. But before we end, I would like to share something. Yeah.
Christoph,
Yeah.
mind blank. Webb has sent out an email to everybody to invite newsletter items. So if anybody has anything, would you contact him directly? That would be fantastic. And I think the deadline is kind of fast approaching.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes, and before I finish now, I would like to thank you to Caroline. I can't do it in person, so I'll give her a virtual flowers and also some Swiss chocolate, and I hope I can give it next time when I see you in person directly to you. So thank you very much for the very good time we had together, for organizing these webinars, and for all your effort and thoughts and everything you gave for this ICoP webinar. So thank you very much to you with this flower and the chocolate.
Oh, Christoph, thank you so much. And I look forward to receiving them in person really soon. And, do you have help to replace me, or are you looking for somebody else to step into the breach?
Yes, we already have two persons who will
join
the organization committee, and it's Joan and Michelle, and they're both here. And maybe you want to say hi, that they see you.
Safe hands then.
Yes. So I'm very happy that you will join the organization of this webinar series, and I'm looking forward to working together with you too. And yeah, now we are really at the end, and I would like to mention our next webinar.
Christoph, sorry, can I just say I'm not leaving ICoP, so you will still see me about. It's just stepping back from the webinar and being a director.
Of course. And we are happy that you're still in ICoP, and we have the possibility to work with you and that you're still with us. Thank you very much. Yes, and last but not least, I would like to mention our next webinar, which will take place on July 22. At the same time, will be another very interesting topic. We will look in our group for the next topics, and we will announce it then early enough. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you there again. Have a good day, and for our Swiss colleagues, toll Sie doch, Sie sind und einen schönen Tag noch. Goodbye.
Thanks, Christoph and Caroline. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.